Hello, and welcome
Hello.
to our 20th coffee class. I know. 20th coffee class. So today we are going...
What could have I done with those 20 hours?
20 hours, more like 40.
Yeah, I know, man. We started spilling over. Today we are breaking the story in Spirited Away, a Miyazaki film that is quite good. So
she
really
said,
selling it hard, Alexie.
She said somewhat defensively.
It's great. It's great.
It's a movie that's actually good.
And look, we have a fifth commentator, a furry one.
Puppy.
She has opinions about Spirited Away.
Does she?
Wait
a minute. She was in Spirited Away, was she not?
Right. She was. You'll recognize she was flying around and fighting these paper things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought she was one of those little coal puffballs.
Also,
she kind of looks like that.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Were those in Totoro, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
So, John, let's hear your quick analysis, and we can jump back to the larger group.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We should say, because I've got. And by the way, I've got to give full credit to. I did a beat sheet breakdown, and then he sent me one that
was mine.
No, that was
Alexie. Alexie wrote that.
Alexie
wrote that.
Oh my God!
No, that was Alexie. That was 100% Alexie's. I just copy pasted it so that the file you didn't need to open the file.
Let's start over. Hi, everybody. Wow, how wonderful!
Man.
How wonderful to see you, Alexie. How lovely to see you.
Oh, good to see you too, John.
And what a wonderful breakdown you did.
Oh, thank you.
of this very long movie.
And by the way, if everyone watching looks in the comments, I've included the document that John's talking about there, so you can look at it yourself.
Well, then I should probably shut up. But
no, it's my take. So I mean,
okay. By the way, I think it's Alexie. Once again. And Avi, I don't know what the hell you're even doing here. You didn't do anything.
I did nothing.
You did nothing. I mean, you brought a dog. You brought a dog.
I brought a dog. I brought a dog, and I helped you open a file.
Yeah, well, there's that, but God knows. Anyway, Alexie, it's dead on. The little girl, it's Chihiro?
Chihiro.
Yes. Chihiro is the protagonist. Her flaw, she's scared of everything. She needs. By the way, did anybody? Am I alone here? I can't be in noticing the parallels with the Wizard of Oz.
You are not alone.
Oh yeah.
Huh. I had not identified that, but yes.
I got an Alice in Wonderland vibe.
But I also have to mention that possibly the reason for that is that both Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz borrow heavily from like the basic fairy tale form of, a young person goes to a magical world.
And wants to go home.
And wants to go home.
Yeah. And home is the parents. So the parents, are the objective inciting incidents.
Here, wait, let's go ahead and put you up.
Do what?
We're going to do your thing. Ready?
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay. So, parents. By the way, I kind of love the parents turning into pigs. I mean, I thought, oh, my God. One of the things I love about this film is the imagination and creativity. I mean, it's mind-boggling. The parents are pigs, so they turn into pigs. That's lovely. Haku is the mentor. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. He's brilliantly used, sparingly, but brilliantly used as a mentor should be. Objective, turn parents back into humans. So it's all great. Alexie broke it down brilliantly. Antagonist is Yubaba. Am I pronouncing that correct, Alexie?
Yep, that's it.
And I have a question. The midpoint, no face goes nuts and eats frog guy.
Yes.
Is that can we bring every? By the way, we should. Well, wait. Let me. So, Alexie, is that? I mean, I was curious about that.
Let's see. Well,
I couldn't necessarily identify.
When was so for
midpoint.
me? that was the midpoint because that was when things really became more dangerous for her. And like when she made a big mistake, or like when something was perceived to be a mistake, is why I considered that the midpoint. And the rules shifted because then also everyone was mad at her. Like, right. And they were, I love that. One of my favorite things about the film is I'm jumping way ahead here, is that the ultimate test, when she realizes that No Face is sick, she saves No Face. My absolute favorite part of the film is when Yubaba gives her one final test. That final fight is brilliant. This is the first time I'd seen the film. I didn't see it coming. I was thrilled with, you push the protagonist one more time to make sure that they've corrected their flaw, that they've gotten over that, gotten over their inherent fear of everything. And also the last line of the film, which again resonates for me in many ways, the same as The Wizard of Oz, when she says, "I think I can handle it." And her parents say, "You're going to a new place, a new school." And she says, "I think I can handle it." That is, in fact, sums up that she's the resolution for this character. I think it's really, I think those final beats really make the film. Absolutely loved them. If you hear a reservation in my voice, here's the reservation I have with the film. I felt like the middle of it, I think it's 2 hours long. I felt like the middle of it, and I'll address this to Alexie, that the middle got muddy. I felt like the middle, there were too many things going on that distracted me from Chihiro's journey. Yeah, but I may be alone, huh? So an interesting thing is that Miyazaki in an interview said that for him, the movie ended when she got on the train, which is before the final fight, but that for him, that was when the movie had ended. And I think what he means by that is that she's not, by that point, she's not scared anymore, is how I interpreted it. Like her transformation is basically done.
Right. Because it's a beautiful moment when she walks alone, when she makes that journey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have a question.
But yes.
So the two of you were talking about how the midpoint is when No Face eats the frog. I feel like the midpoint might be a different moment, and I'm wondering what you think about this. I thought that the midpoint was after an entire half film of Chihiro struggling to find her place in this world and to show that she's worth keeping alive and human. And I thought that the midpoint, which happens about halfway through the movie, is when she succeeds with that polluted river god and shows and enriches everybody and saves the river god and succeeds with the big bath. And suddenly she's like considered part of the family. I considered that to be a massive change to her world. It's a positive change to her world, but considering how negative it had been, I feel like that's as big a shift as you could do in the middle.
I completely agree with Avi. And the way I read the film was that the reason I would identify the midpoint is that that's when the energy of her situation totally shifts. Right. She now has some control and some respect, but where before she didn't.
I guess for me, I feel like that was an important moment. But when I think about midpoints, I think about specifically a setback where she loses control. And so she gained control in that moment, which is why I think it was basically like I put it as the last beat before the midpoint, because now she actually is starting to get some momentum. She has some hope, and then the midpoint ruins it.
I think this can get into semantics a little bit, because those moments happen so close together.
Yeah.
It's the night she solves it is when No Face kills the frog, or not kills, but eats the frog. It's kind of, they're like right there.
It's Parasite. It's Parasite a little bit.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because it's the beat where she's happily enjoying her life in the house for the first time, and then something starts to go wrong. But I figured that's about as big a shift in her new status quo as could be expected, considering that the whole first half she's lucky to not have been turned into a pig, like for any little, tiny little thing. And they're throwing her at this massive test and assuming she won't make it. It's the first time that everybody's opinion of her changes. So that's why I thought, but it's a different story paradigm in a way.
Mm-hmm. By the way, one of the things they've done really well in this film, and it's worth looking at and analyzing, is friends and enemies. There are, again, my small prejudice here with the film, or my small problem with the film, is there are too many pieces. But Lynn, Big Baby, Human Face, Bird, No Face, River Spirit, the way these are used in terms of who are friends, who are enemies, they all have a place. They all are affecting story, and I think that it's really well done. Again, my only question was, was it necessary to have that many? I don't know.
Oh, by the way, I asked people to say what they think the midpoint is.
What do they say?
We got a lot of people agreeing with me.
Can anybody else see the responses? I mean, not that I would dispute Alexie's integrity, but
Oh, here we go. I agree, Kaylin. Rachel,
Kaylin.
No face eating frog. Sanda, no face eating frog. And then, here's this one. I think it's maybe what happens at the middle.
Very good. And by the way,
that's a fair argument.
And by the way, nice photograph, I have to say.
That is great.
Yeah, my hair used to look like that.
You've never showed us your hair, and I feel like it's been promised a handful of times now.
A handful.
I'm expecting a dark backstory.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of a dark backstory, which I will not reveal. But yes, I will find a picture of me with hair. I'm going to do that. That's my mission for this week.
I'm so
I feel
excited.
like you had a blonde ponytail. Is my guess.
Not a fucking chance. Are you out of your mind?
It was a mohawk, Alexie.
Can I bring up a point about Spirited Away? Responding to not as interesting as this is.
Oh man!
One of the things I actually like about Miyazaki's films is that he overcrowds the second acts with lots of friends and enemies. He all of his. You should thought this was overcrowded. You should see Princess Mononoke. That film has so much going on, but part of what throws me and what I enjoy. It's so rare for when I watch a movie where I enjoy the film and I have no idea what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like by having so many threads in the air, by having so many characters, it kind of, for me, it's like it acts as misdirection for what the central action will be a little bit. Like I'm able to go on the magical journey a little bit more. Just for me, I mean, that's kind of like a minor,
Adam, that's a great point. And by the way, here's my problem. Oh God, do we have time to go into that? No, here's no, it's a really good point. And part of, because I teach all the time, and I'm always trying to get students to find a spine, which is so difficult to do. So I have a little bit of a bias against. I agree with what you're saying. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was next. It's thoroughly entertaining. The imagination is just mind-boggling. But I'm kind of I'm like a hamster on a wheel. Isn't that sad? That I just have to train myself to talk to students so that they approach story from a very fundamental way, because until you have a really cognizant appreciation of story and all these things that we're talking about, which is the whole purpose of being here, and understanding how to analyze films and analyze your film. But until you do that, you don't, and Adam, I'm curious to know what you think of this, you don't want to get this messy you know what I mean? And I'm kind of just programmed myself.
Yeah.
Alexie, were you the one who shared that article in the Discord about the interview with Miyazaki? I
did.
Right. So in that article, he talks about how much he had to cut out, and just kind of talking, looking at what Adam's saying, how he overcrowds these movies. Alexie and Adam, you know more about this than I do, but I'm so curious about the process that crowds something so much while he starts animating without a script that he has to pull it back. I'm really curious.
So I was
It's
looking
absolutely
at
insane. But yeah, Alexie, you talk about it.
I was just looking at his creation process, and I think what it is that he marinates on these ideas for a really long time, and then he starts writing storyboards and gives them to the animators as he's making them. So he's coming up with storyboards, handing them over, and then continuing. So he's not getting a chance to go back and revise at this point. But I do think that he must be like mentally going through these story questions and figuring things out ahead of time. So he's not just winging it necessarily, but he does get locked into these really detailed storyboards once he gets there.
Alexie, so you're saying that he has such a wonderful sophistication with understanding story that he can launch into this creation without having a
beat sheet.
A beat sheet. I didn't want to say beat sheet, but yes, Avi, you're right.
And I think you'd appreciate this, John, but in the 90s, John Lasseter was such a Studio Ghibli fan. He had, when Pixar was doing early story meetings for their first films, they would have weekly Miyazaki screenings of like Princess Mononoke and, like the Totoro and these, like, for the sense of story to understand like, wow, these films hit emotionally on a different level than other children's films. Why is that? And Miyazaki was a huge part of Pixar's early developmental influence, which is interesting.
Miyazaki, it's fascinating because, again, and listen, really appreciate what John said.
So Aaron says, really appreciate what John said, but I'm curious about what he meant by you don't want to get this messy.
Okay, great, Aaron. So what I mean is, Miyazaki, I mean, this is a very unique storyteller. This is somebody who has a very probably just intuitive understanding of story. If you do, Aaron, if you or any of you, if you do have that, God bless you. I mean, that's fantastic. But most of us have to learn story. And learning story is looking at it, again, analytically and practically, and then building. There are very few people who can scattershot it and still make it work. So that's what maybe that's a good, I don't know if that's good or not, but he's scattershotting and yet it still works. I've been teaching a long time, and I don't think I've ever met maybe one young man. I think I've had one student who could let the script get away and bring it back. That is highly unusual. So what I was saying to Adam a moment ago was I've kind of trained myself to hopefully share, I hope, information about how to approach story in case you don't have that sensibility. Most of us don't. It's very unique. Elmore Leonard, great writer, passed away a few years ago. So many of his movies or his books were made into films. He didn't write the screenplays, but Elmore Leonard was a dedicated, serious writer, lived in Detroit, Michigan, got up every morning, went into his office and went to work and stayed there until 5:30 p.m. And that's what he did. But he could write, he could scattershot, he could just start writing, and he could always bring it back because he had such a refined understanding of story. And that's really, really unique. One of the good, I think some of the good news is through work, just through sweat, you can learn story. Story can be learned. So if you're not Miyazaki or you're not Elmore Leonard and you don't have that just innate understanding of I've taken a left, now I better get back to the middle, you can learn it. And that's yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and tell me things make sense. But I feel like the goal ultimately is to stop thinking about it, because you learn structure and you start writing kind of very consciously thinking about what the specific beats are and what the functions of specific, like the mentor and whatnot. But I feel like for a while that's a bit like breathing manually, where you're very conscious of every breath you take, knowing that if you stop breathing, you die, and you kind of want to get to a point where it becomes involuntary.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's Malcolm Gladwell's "Do It 10,000 Times." You do it 10,000 times. The student I was referring to a moment ago, who I think has kind of a bizarre and very unique understanding of story, he wrote a script in my class last year. He killed the protagonist before the damn movie was over. And I looked at him, I said, "Are you out of your freaking mind?" Or something like that. And he had a reason. He had a reason. And, you know, and I don't kiss my students, but I almost kissed him because I thought he broke a rule, but then he had a reason behind doing it. So, Avi, if you take your theory a step further, then when you're approaching that thing, when you're approaching that story and you go, okay, I know I'm going to break a rule here. But knowing you're going to break a rule means you probably can do it. Too often people go, oh yeah, I mean, I kind of forgot about the protagonist. Well, that's not knowing you're breaking the rule. Did that resonate at all? Did it?
It did.
You start to trust your instincts a bit.
You start, and it also, you start to have a story brain. I mean, you know, God, that's the only brain I have, sadly, but it's a story brain. So when I hear a story, and this is I'm not bragging because again, it's the only thing I can do. But when I hear a story, I can break it, generally speaking. You know, like when students in my class pitch a story, I go, oh, I know where, I mean, Avi, you've been in my class, and Alexie, you've been in my class. I mean, you know, but that's just by rote. That's just because I've studied it.
Real quick, I want to share some storyboards so people can see what these look like.
Right.
Let's see if this works.
Hoo-hoo.
Oh my God. Where'd you get that? I got to get that book.
It was on
Amazon.
Amazon.
Oh my God.
So this was what some people consider to be the midpoint.
God, she won't let it. She won't let it. You got me, God. She is
Correct
tenacious.
people. Correct people.
Imagine what it's like having her as a freshman in college. You just kind of went, do I love her or do I want to shoot myself? But anyway, that's fantastic.
Man.
What's the name of that book?
It's the original storyboards.
Oh, I got to order that. God,
it was on
beautiful.
Amazon. It is. I wish I could read Japanese to know what's said in like the margins.
Maybe you could work on that for next week.
Yeah, I'll learn Japanese
Japanese
by next week. That's fine with me. So like, I'm wondering if that's dialogue in the margins or what that is.
Oh my God, this is beautiful.
Maybe it's just a description of the beat.
I mean, by the way, this
That's
is something, I'm not suggesting people should run out and spend money, but this is something, this is like a Bible.
Yeah,
that's
and
like, that's a story Bible.
He has these for a lot of his movies.
I'm gonna have to buy.
I saw Mononoke. Princess Mononoke had one.
Hey John, you should really see Princess Mononoke. It's incredible.
It's great.
It's like an adult film, like epic fantasy, classic adventure, like really high stakes.
What does this mean? Does anybody know what this means?
Is
this like breaking it?
Are you watching?
It says John Warren is amazing.
Yeah, he wrote that in his.
Not everything's about you, John.
What? Wait a minute. When did that happen?
Man. I'm curious.
Can I make an argument for a second? So while we are talking about how Miyazaki, can break the rules or overcrowd his movies or whatever, at the end of the day, though, the really important stuff was always there. Chihiro's objective is so strong, and it's there the entire way. Like, we have a very strong sense of an arc. There's a real emotional arc that means something in the story. Like, the stuff that really matters is still there. He doesn't change that.
Adam, that's exactly right. I mean, that's it. So he's got the nuts and bolts. And I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but what I spend most of my time doing is teaching the nuts and bolts. You're absolutely right. They're all there. That's why he can go astray. That's why he can go off because he knows the spine is there. He always comes back to it. I find it
Also, because he knows he can get emotion out of us just by creating these gorgeous images.
Oh,
right?
I mean, yeah, no, this is. I mean, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant.
And by the way,
oh yeah,
I was just going to say, when I asked people what that meant, people told me, including your brother, Avi, said
he's
that
studying Japanese.
it says that part means part D, which is what I was curious about. Like if he breaks these into different sections and what those sections mean. So I'm going to look.
Avi, your brother's studying Japanese?
Yeah, he's a smarty pants.
Where's he going to school again?
Yeah, where's he
I'll
go?
leave it up to you if you want to comment.
Where's he go to school?
I will leave that to him if he wants to publicize. I feel like I've spoken for him enough.
So, oh fuck! I was so
Avi, as smart as you are, I said fuck earlier. It's okay.
Yeah.
As smart as you are, are you like, where are you in the chain of your family?
Where am I in the chain of my family?
Yeah, on the hierarchy, because your brother, as we know, goes to some, speaks Japanese.
John, are you familiar with Voltron?
Yes, a little. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're Voltron.
Oh, I really want to talk about this.
Wait. We missed one before. What was the one before?
Oh, it was a joke about the fact that this episode of Young Screenwriters is directed by Quentin Tarantino.
That's funny. There's a lot of breather moments.
Sarah says, sorry, I want to read these out loud because I think at some point we're going to release the audio. So that's why I keep being annoying about reading the thing in full. So Sandra says, there are a lot of breather moments in Miyazaki films. Another film that pauses and takes in scenery is...
Yes.
How do you say that?
Kuron.
Okay.
Roma.
Thoughts on arbitrary moments like this. He calls these moments ma. Adam, I assume you know more about that than I do, so I
have a lot to say about this. So, and I actually have an anecdote about Disney's release of Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, his 80s film. So when he released in 1984 his first big epic fantasy film that was distributed in America by Disney, Disney said, there's too much quiet in the film. You need more score. Americans cannot deal with silence in an animated film. So Joe Hirashi, the composer, had to compose an extra 30 minutes of music, which is insane. But so much of Miyazaki's films, and I think this is a Japanese filmmaking attribute going back to Kurosawa and further, is that there's a lot of quiet moments. There's a lot of focus on sound textures of an environment. To establish an environment, there's sort of like the sound of the rain, the sound of the leaves, the sound of the characters walking, giving a sense of place. And one of the reasons his films have such a strong sense of place is that sound design, that sound environment, those quiet moments of a character breathing in a corridor. That's what makes the place feel real and tangible for people. So, and I think you'll notice if you look at any classic Disney film, there is not a single moment of space. It is score, Beauty and the Beast, wall to wall is music. If there is a character who isn't talking, there's soundtrack of them going down the city street. Belle walking around talking to a teapot or whatever. There's music everywhere, and I think this is a conscious moment and it's a directing thing. Considering the small moments, taking in the environments of the space rather than just sort of like telling you how to feel because the music's happy. That's my opinion.
I think it's called
that's
Mickey
a great.
It's called what?
I think it's called Mickey Mousing. I think I heard somebody describe this, where it's music that is essentially it is fitting the actions that are happening on screen. So somebody walks down the stairs, So I think it's called Mickey Mousing.
And
I just shared an article with people that I haven't read it yet, but I thought it looked really interesting. I read part of it. It's called Miyazaki's Ma, which is the name of that negative space, like the emptiness. And so it's called Miyazaki's Ma and the Development of Space. And so it's really talking about how he uses those moments that aren't really allowed in American animated films or overall, really.
That's right.
Like the moment where she's looking out over the ocean up is one of the iconic moments from the film, and there's nothing happening there. She's just chilling.
Going back, going back to Adam's point, which is really well taken. Hollywood American films, Hollywood films, yeah, I mean, don't allow it. I mean, you'll be in the editing room and they say, wow, we can, when they used to film, they'd say, we can trim 8 frames off this scene because they're just walking away. And you go, don't you want to let it breathe a little bit? No, God, no. We know they're walking away. I mean, I'll go back. Okay, big laugh, hold for laugh, third man.
Hold for laugh, the third man.
The third man, that last shot. It takes her forever to walk out of that frame. And you got to love Carol Reed, who said, screw it, man. I'm staying with it. Let her walk the whole way and pass camera. But yeah, I mean.
Well, we have to,
yeah.
But John, we have to acknowledge the reverse excess is horrible. Like these films where you just watch, characters sweeping endlessly, or like these long, drawn-out takes for no discernible narrative purpose. With Miyazaki, it's always intentional. It's always there's a story moment.
Yeah. So
here's an interesting. Is it Andile? And if you let me know, I'll pronounce it right next time. There's a Japanese genre of storytelling called slice of life that explores silence beautifully. Just thought that was a cool note. Wanted to share it.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, like Ozu films.
But Adam, yes. So and maybe your word there is one that we should can think about is purpose. So what's the purpose of this beat? And that's when when you're writing your beat sheet or outline carding, whatever. What is the purpose of this scene? So if the purpose is to give air to the film, yes, I mean that's reasonable and that makes sense and it's valid. But knowing the purpose, and that to take it back to beat sheets just for a second, what is the purpose of every scene? What is the purpose of every moment? That beautiful book from this film, the storyboard book, it's purposeful, and you find with great storytellers, they understand the purpose of this moment. And then they can defend it, and that makes it worthwhile.
Something that I just remembered is that in the Discord, we talked a little bit about these things that are called memory shots that the director or the showrunner, I guess, of Big Little Lies uses in a lot of his films. And basically, it's occurring to me now, but it's like a moment that would be Ma, but because we can't handle that, we need to see explicitly like what's happening in their mind. So he intercuts scenes that we've, what they're thinking about, but in silence over top of when they're just sitting there having a moment. Like the character will be in a car thinking about something terrible that happened with her husband. So we see her in the car and then we see flashes of what she's thinking about with no sound. And I always thought that was really cool, but.
It is very cool. It's also, by the way, some of these things we're talking about are the director's choice. So in a script, you've got to be real careful about these moments because they're going to feel soft in a script. When the director gets the script and has a moment, and director's shooting, and he's going, we're going to hold in this one of Nicole Kidman in Big Little Lies. We're going to hold in whatever. That's a director's choice. And as in a screenplay, as a screenwriter, you want to be really careful about that. In fact, I would recommend against it. If you say, here's a one shot of Nicole Kidman, well, how would you say that? You would say interior car, Nicole, whatever her character is, looks out at the ocean. Wow, really? I mean, that's a dead beat. That's a put too many of those in your script, and you get a real soft script.
John, have you read the Dan O'Bannon book about screenwriting yet? Have we talked?
Yeah, about halfway through it. It's really good.
Did we talk about hedonic adaptation yet?
Wait,
Because I feel like that's Dan O'Bannon. Dan O'Bannon is the original one of the original co-writer of Alien and Return of the Living Dead and Total Recall. and he wrote a great book about screenwriting and structure. And he makes a good point in this book, and I feel like I've talked about it before, but I think it's relevant here, about hedonic adaptation, which is human minds are really good at adjusting to shock and novelty. So if something happens that rocks your world, that's crazy, that's insane, we adjust to that. If something happens really fast, we adjust to that speed. And his tip in this book is, if you want your viewer, your reader, etc., to not get sort of numbed to what you're doing, you do need those beats where you pull back from that, because they kind of need an unconscious reset so that when you shock them again, they actually feel it, because otherwise
they get numb.
It gets overwhelming. So like even in Mad Max Fury Road, which is an insane film from top to bottom, there are these moments where they're just sort of sitting and they're talking. And those are necessary. And it kind of on the reverse of this, because you were talking about how these moments need to be necessary. You can kind of tell sometimes when speed is unnecessary, like when it sort of betrays insecurity on the part of the filmmakers, on the part of the writer, where it's, I'm so worried that the audience is bored, so two people are going to run into the room with a gun. You know, and
we're back to Tarantino.
Tarantino lets his characters chill, but
yeah, he does. You're absolutely right.
J.J. Abrams, but you know, you have somebody run into a room with guns because you're worried that the audience is getting bored of the quiet. More often than not, that quiet will not have been very long to begin with, and also your audience is going to be aware that the writer is saying, or the director is saying, whoever's in charge of this concept is saying, I realize you're getting bored. Wake up, please. And it doesn't work. It doesn't ring true. So that's, Maud seems like a very important thing to master, even as a
yes. Yeah.
Sarah says, I think the pause is important to give the audience time to interpret what just happened and let it resonate. Which that was a note that I got on some early scripts where I do a lot of action adventure, and early on I would get the note like, we need time to process this. Like you need some downbeats mixed in there. Like they don't have to be long, but like you need some moments for us to like reacclimate in between. So.
I think Noah Baumbach is really good at that. You know,
he is.
He's really good at. I mean, there are moments. He's really good. He's Sarah. It's a good point. But yeah, you see in his film, it's why I think he's so amazing that he's not afraid to do that. He's not afraid to go there. But again, he's the director, and he's making those choices sometimes as a director.
Paul asks, does space on the page translate to space, or I guess time, in the film? So like if you include stuff on like separate lines, if you make it take up more space on the page, does that imply that you're going to give more time to it in the film? Do you have?
Well, typically, as you know, or the script translates to about a minute a page. But this is a different question. Does the space on the page translate to space on the page?
I think I got this question.
Take it, Avi.
So if you want there to be a beat in your film, does it pay to write it on the page that in a more spread out way to imply that it should take a little bit longer to get through, in a way that it implies that there's a little bit like more time happening for this thing? And I think it depends on how you write and what you're actually writing, because if what you're writing is a ton of action clipped in these little kind of like sentence fragments that take up an entire page to describe something that happens fast, it could read like it's slower than it ought to be. It could read really fast. It kind of depends on what you're using this space to describe. Like John, in the script that I wrote for your class, there's a beat where I had a character die, and it's a sort of a shock. And one thing I did, kind of for the fun of it, to imply that we should feel this shock moment was in the sort of space before the next line, I actually added an extra line. So it's two spaces lines between that. Just because I feel like that does kind of translate in your brain a little bit as there's a beat here.
Yeah.
So if you're writing an action sequence that you want to take a minute and you can fill the page with that, it will feel like it takes a minute. But if you're doing it in these little clipped ways, it could feel really fast. I don't know if I'm making any sense. What do you guys think?
I think I agree with the idea that the way it reads on the page should be tonally, the word choice, every choice you make in terms of like, is this one word for emphasis? Am I writing this in caps? Every device you use to communicate ink on the page should communicate tone and speed and contrast in the film. So everything you do has to do with how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare, but it's something to aim for. If you're writing a comedy and your descriptive passages are witty, all you're trying to do is take the reader on a ride. All you're trying to do is make the reader turn the page.
Yeah.
And what you don't want to let the reader do is put the thing down.
Right.
So if you can be inventive, creative, and again, tonally, your descriptive passages are in keeping with the tone of the film, then you've hooked the reader. I mean, and by the way, it's a rare thing to do, but that's something to aim for.
Can I bring up?
I will say, I'll be super quick on this. I will say, if you do a break in a paragraph on a page, we'll imagine, okay, this is a new image. There's a new idea here. If you say something in a few words, we will imagine that this is something that is quick. You say something in more words, we will imagine it is something that is slow.
Yeah.
I don't know if it necessarily translates out to white space per se. Because you can have something that's a ton of white space that is very little happening. So I think it's white space ratio of what's actually happening in the words that you're using.
Yeah, because if it's like, if you have white space, like if you have like punch, kick, da-da-da, then that's going to read really fast, even if it's on separate lines. But if it's like breathe, like tries to unlock the safe, sort of, like if you spread it out, like it just depends on the context, but it can go either way. And then Avi, wasn't it your script where you broke the rules, but it was really cool? You put something on its own page, wasn't that yours?
That was the one I wrote for John. Because I wanted it to feel like a bomb going off, and I knew that if I wrote like it was basically all the characters in my script were turning into werewolves, and if I wrote everyone changes on a line in the middle of a page. Where other things are happening, it would feel like just another beat. And so I gave it its own page, just the word changes.
And it was great. It was great. I mean, I remember reading it and seeing that page and thinking, oh, he got it. He did something unique and different. It had the desired effect, or as we were saying a moment ago, the purpose. The purpose was realized.
Right. The page is a tool to use. So, if you read enough scripts and you kind of get a sense of what rhythm feels like on the page, you can play with that a bit.
So can I bring up a point related to Ma earlier, which is used in this film and many, many, many other films that, use contrast in general, either tonal contrast or, timing contrast, which is comic relief, especially in animated films that have dramatic sequences. Like, for example, Chihiro being isolated and alone. And then, introducing funny, quirky characters like humor, like the little, like Ash, like, cute little thing, like introducing moments of release for the audience after tension, I think is so important, especially in a children's film where you have to be conscious of like, who's watching this? You want to have those moments of, it's a different type of contrast than what we're talking about, other than like just the sound design of like letting characters breathe, but also like having scenes have different tonal qualities. Like if you have an hour and a half of nonstop drama in a children's family film without any release, it's not going to play well. Pixar films always have jokes,
Yeah.
I mean, if we're in a world, if we're being introduced to a new world, in general, there is something to be said for letting us see what this world is like if it is expansive. If there's a lot to learn about this world, let's just kind of navigate it a little bit and see all the weird things about it to the point where they are just sort of normal to us. Because, if this character is entering a new world and we want it to feel like the new normal and not like a passing crazy thing, you gotta kind of get to a point where we get a sense of what is normal here and what sort of the rules are. So you live in it.
And I think
you go.
I was gonna say, I think that the place, just like, to get technical, I think in a script, normally the place for that is after the inciting incident, like at the beginning of Act 2, is when you when there are characters spending time getting to know this new world and is like adjusting, like when Harry Potter goes to Diagon Alley and he's like, whoa, everything's crazy. The space for that is usually early act 2, definite, like not after the midpoint. By the time you hit the midpoint, everything is pretty full blast. But yeah.
We also want a reason to think that this stuff is actually wonderful and not just different, you know.
Yeah, and going back just for a second to Avi's Wolfbane, you know, that script. I remember reading that script, and Avi, I think I've never told you this, but and I don't think you meant it to be this way, but I've read that script several times, it's a wonderful script, and I always imagined that it's black and white. It felt like you had sucked the color out of that world. You created such a unique and a wonderful, and it stood on its own, that world. And I every time I read that script, I thought this film was in black and white. Now I can't. Did you think of that, or was that just me?
It's interesting to think about. I hadn't thought about it. I haven't thought about it in a while, though. I'm kind of surprised that we're talking about it now, but I appreciate that you enjoyed that. That's an interesting thought, black and white. If anybody knows anybody who wants to make a black and white werewolf movie,
I'll make some calls.
And by the way, not cheap.
I know a guy.
I know a guy. It's in New York City, and it's
Yeah, but speaking of color, could you imagine this film, Spirited Away, in black and white?
No.
Can we mention that Studio Ghibli is one of the only remaining animation studios that does hand color shading?
Oh, really? Jeez. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, so all anime has moved to digital coloring.
Oh, Avi, we lost you for a sec.
Am I still here? Do you still have
you're
me?
here. You're here.
Yeah, you're here.
You're a little glitchy, but we see you.
The hurricane's coming.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I had a little bit of it, too.
Think about the visuals. I think there are, like...
Oh, Avi, I can't...
Avi, we can't hear you.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay.
Right there, you came back.
In the meantime, here's a quick question. In the meantime, Sandra says, when pitching an animated feature or a live action, can you show concept drawings or storyboards, something visual, or is it advised not to?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, I pitched a lot. I mean, I pitched a lot in the course of my career, like a lot. And you've got, you know, I've heard so many varying points of view about this, about how long. And there's some fool at NYU who says it's 5 minutes, which is absolutely wrong. I don't know. It's nuts. You've got about 15 minutes.
Shade.
What?
I said shade.
Shade.
Is it working, guys?
Now you're back.
Now you're back. So anyway, the point of that is, so bringing in storyboards or things like that, yes, you can do it, but remember, you've got to move when you're in the room. You've got about 15 minutes. So if you're gonna use storyboards, I know people who have done that. I know people who have brought in, actually had the poster made, and walked in and pulled a sheet off the poster, a high concept movie, and said, "Here's the movie," and they could see the poster and go, "Oh my God, that's the movie." So all of that works. I don't think, Sandra, you're suggesting gimmicks, but you want to stay away from gimmicks. The bottom line in that pitch meeting, if you're going to use some storyboard pieces, it's telling the story. It's telling the story. So that's all you're doing in that pitch meeting. You got to tell them a story that they can understand, that they can fully appreciate, and that's the deal. Alexie, you have your.
I did have my hand up with what's her name? Who am I again? Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
Tracy Flick. Yeah.
Tracy Flick.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention, because someone also asked about that I write animation stuff, and like, do I write my own animation? That's really hard. More often, it's to get paid for someone to buy your animated script is really difficult if you're not
Tracy Flick.
like if you like wrote a spec, an animated spec, that's really difficult. What I've done more often is pitch on open writing assignments that are animated. So they have an idea and then you do your take on it. And sometimes for those, if I get far enough along, really your goal is to like show them your perspective and get them excited about what you bring to it. So if that means showing them some visuals to help them understand your take and get them hyped up, then great. Like for that one, when I got for one that I did when I got far enough along in the pitching process and it was worth it, I had a friend of mine drop some character sketches that so that's
smart.
It's really about like, does it actually add something? And you have to be really critical on yourself because you don't want to attach your own storyboards if they're kind of trash. You want to make sure that whatever you're showing them is, you know, really emphasizing what your story is and add something.
At the end of the day, it just comes down to read the room, right?
Read the room, man, and that's a whole trick unto it. We should do a whole class on reading the room, because you know you go. Can I say one thing? Let me just say one thing about reading the room, Adam. That's a good
Go for it.
Because when you go into a pitch meeting, and this is something I stress in my class, I'll stress it here. You know what you want. You want them to buy the pitch. And what I say to students when they're going, Alexie, I probably said this to you because you've pitched a lot by now. You know, when you go into a pitch meeting, you know what you want. The catchphrase I use is think from the other side of the desk. Mm-hmm. What do they want? Right. Because writers get caught up in, I want them to buy it, but what are they looking for? What do they want? Who are they? And where are they on the food chain? Is the person you're pitching to, does he or she have to pitch it in the Thursday story meeting, or are you pitching to somebody who can buy it in a room? So those are two really different things. If you're pitching to somebody who's got to repitch it in the Thursday morning story meeting, that's tough because by Thursday they will have forgotten and they may be shitty pitchers. So who knows? But so then you've got to give them something really concise. By the way, a lot of people ask this just to, you don't leave something, rarely do you leave something behind. Rarely do you, that's kind of a rookie move. You don't say, and by the way, here's my beat sheet. You would never, God, don't do that. But what are they looking for? And that changes, by the way, from studio to studio. If you're going to pitch to Disney, it's different than pitching to Universal. And so knowing who you're pitching to helps. That's all.
All right, I was answering some questions on this.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
Yeah.
People, just to quickly say, to address this, Monica asked about the open writing assignment jobs and where you find those and where those come from. I just said this. I used to think that there was like some secret.
I have a thought. It's kind of along the lines of, thought about, I was going to say briefly.
Yeah.
Avi, you're kind of.
We keep losing you, Avi.
Avi, we lost you. Until he's back. Alexie, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that, let's see. Where was I? Oh, right. So we were asking about open writing assignments and where those come from. And at first I used to think there was like some secret manager
Can you guys hear me at all? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Alexie, finish your thought and let's go to Avi.
Yeah. So at first I thought that there was some like secret manager agent Craigslist where all these things were listed and they were just like, oh, look at this one that came up today in the Craigslist and submitted. But really it's much more informal than that. It's much more about your manager will have a list of contacts, or I guess your agent might too, but like they'll have a list of contacts at production companies or studios and they'll go to them and they'll say, what are you working on? Like, what ideas are you developing? What are you looking at writers? Like, what do you need writers for? And then they might email them back and say, well, we're thinking about doing a, I don't know, some like an animated story about ketchup, and we're not sure what to do with it yet, but we're looking at a writer for it. And then your manager, if they think it's a good fit for you, will say, okay, well, I'm going to send you a sample for a writer I represent, and they'll send a script. And then if they like it, then usually what they'll do is they'll have a call with you, and they'll explain a little bit more about, like, this is kind of what we're thinking. We don't know what it is, but we know we want the protagonist to be a 10-year-old girl, and we kind of want it to have the same vibe as Frozen, and cool, what do you think? And you'll kind of just talk to them, ask some questions, and then you might start this like back and forth process where you write your take on it, like a treatment or something like that. And it starts out pretty loose because you're not going to do a ton of work for them for free. But as you get further along in the process, it gets more and more like you're writing them your full idea.
Yeah. But Alexie, Alexie's absolutely right. There is no. I've heard there's a open writing assignment list, but it's not viable. Really, as Alexie said, your agent gets a call from a studio or a network or a producer who says, I've got an idea. Do you have a writer who might fit this sensibility? And by the way, that's, you know, one of the reasons to have an agent or a manager. They're fielding that, and then they're putting you either remotely or literally in the room with the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Avi, did you want to? I think you're here with us now.
Can you guys hear me?
Now you're good.
Okay, I'm having some sort of issue on my end. Sorry for that. And I think I missed a whole bunch of what Alexie was saying, and I'm just stuck on an idea I wanted to bring up way back when it was relevant, and I don't know if it's still relevant.
It is. I'm sure it is.
Okay.
We'd love to hear
You're
it.
always relevant, Avi.
Yeah, why worry about being relevant now, Avi?
Okay. Fair enough, John, who brought up my script, and we were talking about Spirited Away. So the thought I had was, you know, like while I was rewatching it the other day and kind of noticing how gorgeous it was, I was thinking, if it was a script that passed like my desk and I didn't have any sense of who wrote it or what the intention behind it was and all that, I would have notes about the story. Like there are things that don't entirely work for me from a story perspective, but I feel like there's so much to forgive in the finished product because it's not entirely aiming for that. Like it's trying to evoke emotions from you in a bunch of different ways. Some of it is this character arc, and some of it is just the visuals that we're seeing and spending time in this world. And I think that was sort of the intention going in. So I mean, like the question of how do you know when a script or when a movie is good? The answer is if you like it. And I feel like there's a lot of that with this kind of film where you can forgive is a harsh word, but you can forgive a lot of things that don't quite cohere from a story perspective just because everything else is working so hard to make sure the intention behind it gets across. And I think it's interesting to kind of talk about this movie for a class that's kind of learning how to write scripts from the fundamentals perspective, because this is the kind of movie that, you know, if you're writing it, you're probably not going to get it made unless you're Miyazaki. But then once you're Miyazaki and you get it made, it's a classic.
Yeah. So what they're really buying is the director.
Right.
Yeah. So they're already 90% sold because they know, without looking at the script, what he brings to the party. And by the way, who wants to be the person to give him notes? I mean, that's not, you know, I don't think you want to go into that room.
Well, it should be mentioned that Miyazaki is the head of his own studio.
There you go. And it works. Like nobody complains, you know, like it works really well. And it's interesting. What in that interview, Alexie, that you shared, he said something like he aimed for it to be 1,200 shots and it ended up being 1,400, and he wanted to get under 1,200, but the story told him to be over 1,400 or something like that. And it's just the sense of he does what feels right to him, and it feels right to us. But if we got it in that sort of blueprint form without the full picture of who is making it, what's it going to look like, what emotion are you going for that will only be achieved visually, it won't get across. And this is kind of interesting burden for the screenwriter to do, because he can't really write Spirited Away and get it to, in front of the eyes that you want to get in front of, unless you're already kind of there.
If that was done by an American company, the train scene would never have happened.
Yeah, neither would the twin sister and the baby. And
a lot of stuff wouldn't happen. But and again, from my point of view, if you're writing scripts with the idea that you get your career started and get an agent, get a manager, get producers interested in you, this is not the script to start with.
Right. I mean, if you're an American studio and you're just getting this script from a version of Miyazaki that nobody knows about, one of the notes you give is, do we need this whole, Haku trying to remember his memory and trying to save Haku kind of thing? Can we get back to the parents? Like, I can totally imagine that happening, but it wouldn't be the same film.
Alexie,
I can't hear you. Are you still there?
Oh, no.
Now I can hear you.
Now you're back.
Muted.
You're back. You're back.
Okay. I was saying, here's a question from our good friend Abdullah, who said that's tied to this. It's connected to this idea of like have the script being kind of crowded. Early in class, Professor John spoke about Spirited Away having too many characters. Is there a general rule about too many characters? What's a good number of characters to have in the film?
12. Never go more than 12.
Exactly a dozen.
That's the no, there is no general rule, but I think there is no general rule. But with this film, I repeat myself. In that second act, sometimes it's distracting. Sometimes the protagonist, we lose track of her because we're going off on these mini stories that are somewhat unrelatable or unrelated to her. He brings us back. He keeps bringing us back, but the point's been made that if this were a studio movie, the magic is in that. The magic is that he's making this a stew. He's throwing in carrots and onion. He's throwing in everything. A studio would make a broth. Oh God, what a bad metaphor! But I did it. I said it. Can we edit that out?
John, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say.
I know it's bad.
As I was saying, John, I think you're great. But
as I was saying, I thought you don't want to do this. I thought, can we cut? Can we edit that? Wait, anyway. But anyway, I do want to make one. I do want to answer the question: is the characters? How many characters you use should be linked to the protagonist's story. Billy Ray's movie. What's that movie? I've talked about it before. Billy Ray. It's the Tom Hanks is the captain of the ship.
Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips. That's
but he's not the captain now.
That was a quote from the movie, John.
Thank you.
You like how I've seen that scene?
Yeah, I like that you've seen that movie.
No,
she's just seen the scene.
Oh, you've only seen the scene.
Hey John, have you seen this movie, Captain Phillips?
Yeah. Okay, moving. This is a funny. It must be Friday. Is it Friday afternoon?
Yes. It is.
It's always Friday afternoon, though.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Somehow. Anyway, but that film, so there are a lot of films. Generally speaking, the number of characters, they should be linked to the protagonist in his or her journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a question for you, John. I think
is it about broth? If it's about broth, I'm not going to answer it.
So more of a statement. So about the broth. Okay, but I do have a question about theme, because kind of like Mad Max Fury Road that we talked about, there's these interesting themes that are built into the texture of the world that are kind of outside of the main character's arc, and there's also stuff built into the arc that's kind of different. And I was wondering what your take on the theme of this film was, or the themes.
Well, to me, the theme of the film is that that as you begin to accept yourself and have confidence, you can move forward into other journeys and not be so frightened of everything. I mean, that's a long kind of idea about the theme. But there are a lot of minor themes in this film and that's again part of his genius, is that he's weaving stuff in that is just
there's stuff that's magical. Kind of built into the texture.
Oh, yeah. He's saying. I mean, He's got a lot to say, and he's saying it.
I mean, like, there's interesting stuff about greed. There's interesting stuff about pollution. But it's kind of funny how, like, for all of that, it doesn't really touch on Chihiro. And, like, ultimately, in the end, her arc has nothing to do with greed, it has nothing to do with pollution. And I was kind of wondering what she sort of proves. So Alexie, you said that Miyazaki thinks that the movie ends when she gets on that train.
Yeah.
But then you do have that final test where she has to figure out which one of the pigs is her parents. And I was kind of wondering what she's proving there, because I'm not entirely sure that I got it. Like, what is she proving about herself in that scene? Yeah, Adam.
I have a theory that all of Miyazaki's, well, most of them are about empathy and human connection and understanding people from different point of views. And I think Chihiro's special ability that she had, even though she was afraid, throughout the film was her ability to empathize with people who were different from her. People empathize with Yubaba, empathize with the baby, empathize even with people who wanted, No Face, I think, is the most significant one, empathize with people who wanted to do her harm. And to the point where her special ability at the end is that, of course, she learned she knew who her parents were out of the pigs, because now she has a sense of, she understood who Haku really was all along. He was the river spirit. The name came to her from her sense of understanding and empathy for other people. She understood that No Face wasn't evil, that he was just sick. The place was making him sick. She had acquired this ability to have empathy. That was my reading, which is,
I think that's pretty.
Yeah, Alexie, what do you think the central question was?
I think the central question had, I never actually figured out the question, but I think it had to do with, her ability to read people, and then, like, her faith in herself. Because I feel like the biggest change for me was that, so there was a lot of playing around with this theme of, like, her being invisible and her being visible, and, like, even with her parents, she had the intuition to know that going into that tunnel was going to be dangerous, and they ignored her. Then she was like, don't eat the food, that's not good, and they ignored her. Then in order to cross into the spirit world, she had to hold her breath to stay invisible, and she couldn't do it. And then she's super visible in the spirit world, but still nobody's listening to her. It's just like this whole thing where they're playing with her being visible. And then I think the key to this is that Miyazaki said that he wrote this for 10-year-old girls. He wrote this with his friend's daughter in mind, and he was making a film for 10-year-old girls specifically. And I think that it has something to do with being confident in your ability, and because Chihiro is still, like, invisible at the end to her parents, but now she's confident. It's like people are you're gonna kind of be pushed to the sidelines a lot, but don't let that.
Right, because
she had the power all along. It's
right. Because there's also this idea of kind of claiming who you are. Like Yubaba steals the names of her workers in order to keep them, and Haku doesn't remember who he is, and Chihiro, like, has to reclaim her original name. Like, even what's the name of the woman who is sort of in charge of
Lynn?
Lynn, yeah. It's like Lynn has this idea of, like, she'll get out of there one day. Kind of, so, like, the interesting idea about sort of choosing your own destiny, I guess, and how that sort of ties to identity. It's interesting. I'm not entirely sure.
I'm just pulling up a few different things where people are.
Can we bring up the biggest question from the film, though, at the end?
Adam,
the big question. I already shared this to Alexie and Avi, but okay, time has passed. The parents were going to go to a new job and a new school. How much time passed? If there was, they probably lost their jobs. Who paid their mortgage for their new house that they just put a down payment on? If they were missing for an extended period of time, they're probably, like, missing from society, and they're going to have, like, all of these life-ruining things they have to deal with. She's going to have to repeat a year of school. She's going to be older. Her parents are like, you have to think, like, what are they leaving us on?
Adam, Spirited Away too. You do it. Answer those questions.
There's definitely a version of this that's like The Wizard of Oz, where it's unclear whether or not it was even real, and, like, the parents act as if nothing's happened, and the car is perfectly intact, and they just keep going. But they make such a point of the car is covered in is covered in leaves and stuff. So they can't really take that approach, but they could have taken the purely thematic approach of it if it really took time.
Kaylin's got an answer for that too. And there had been a rainstorm, which is how the car got a bunch of leaves and branches.
Never mind.
The battery would be
that was
dead.
a choice. They had to draw that, so it was an intentional thing.
You weren't the only one though, Adam, who agrees with you.
I didn't know. I didn't think about the rainstorm. That's totally fair.
There's a hair tie that she wears at the end.
And Paul thinks that it was all done on one human day.
I love it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel thinks it's only been a few days. Yeah,
I think it's only been one day.
They at least missed the movers.
They definitely missed the movers. They were going to be late before the dad decided to take
they
on
had
that.
a key.
Also, why did the dad freaking do that in the beginning? I hated that so much. Where he almost freaking killed them. He was
the road rage.
Yeah, he was trying to be like a macho man driving through the woods, nearly killed everybody.
That's
Alexie. Any guys who are a little macho, Alexie gets just batshit crazy.
I have a question. Did you guys listen to the dub or the subtitles? Did you listen to the original Japanese or the dub?
Japanese.
Dub.
The Japanese.
No, I did. I'm sorry. No, I did subtitle. I did subtitles. Yeah.
Okay. I had subtitles.
But if you do the dub, then Chihiro is played by the same person who does Lilo's voice in Lilo and Stitch,
which is
great.
According to Alexie, the greatest film ever made by anybody.
Oh God.
Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
Oh God. So Lilo and Stitch, and then Lawrence of Arabia.
No, Lawrence of Arabia is not even in the top 200 for Alexie.
Oh yeah, for me, no.
Oh yeah.
Oh Lord.
Casablanca.
Oh my God. By the way, there's a new film coming out. I made a note earlier. Just David Copperfield. Does anybody know the title of this? It's made by this. Yeah, and it's gotten great reviews. Yeah. But if you get a chance, the same filmmaker did Japanese totally better. Yes, Japanese.
I'm just
totally
sharing
better.
everyone's
Japanese,
vote on this.
Yes, Japanese, absolutely. But Death of Stalin, The Death of Stalin.
Yes.
Is a brilliant little film, and it's the same filmmaker whose name I'm forgetting right now.
Armando Iannucci.
Pardon me?
Iannucci.
And he's got a new film coming out, something David Copperfield. But The Death of Stalin is a little gem of a movie, and he's a great writer, director, storyteller.
Yeah, and trigger warning to anybody who doesn't want to watch a comedy that suddenly veers into the real world of oppression and rape and systemic all the things. But it's such a great film, and it does this interesting thing, John, right, where it doesn't really mind that these are characters who they did exist in real life and they were Russian, but they're going to speak whatever accent the actor has.
Yeah, I mean, what he does tonally with this film, and apparently with David Copperfield, which I think you can see today, but what he does with The Death of Stalin is he creates a tone that is so unique and so wonderful and it's what the world you create and the tone that you create should do. He says, this is the journey, this is the ride that we're going on. And once it starts, you can't get off. You can't leave that ride because it's magical.
Intense dark comedy with a lot to say.
Yeah. Really great filmmaker. It's only his third film.
A lot of TV though.
Yeah. Did some Vice. I mean, no, Veep.
Yeah.
Veep.
Just totally random. Have you seen Uncut Gems, John?
Oh God, love that film.
My grandma could not stand it.
Oh,
it's not for grandma. It is not for grandma.
Not really for grandma, no. But I love that film. We should see that film and discuss it because when he has the chance, I should. Well,
don't spoil it. Don't spoil it for those who haven't seen it.
Okay, all right, you're right.
Talk about theme, right?
But he does have a chance to correct his flaw. And
that's so good.
It's a really good film. And by the way, there's no Ma in that film.
I know so many people whose opinion I respect who hated it. Hated Uncut Gems. And I think it's just so tonally upsetting and abrasive.
Alexie would hate it.
I loved it. Oh, Alexie
would hate it.
Alexie,
everyone knows me.
Yeah, they're making the animated version, which I think you're gonna enjoy.
A lot of people in the chat say they hated Uncut Gems. I personally thought it was
really.
Great. I loved it.
So good.
I loved
it wants
Unwatchable, Paul.
It wants you
Well,
to be uncomfortable, right?
I really didn't like.
You to dislike the
It is
Dragged on for too long.
It is not for everybody.
Wow, that's great. Nice picture, by the
Stressful.
way.
Couldn't do it.
Really? Okay. Wow.
Yeah. But
I thought it was great.
I totally get that it really doesn't want you to enjoy it. It
Uncut bones. Uncut winter bones. The winner of my discontented bone something. I don't know.
John, you would have made a very average poet.
Yeah. And that's what I aspire to, by the way. It didn't work for you.
Oh, sorry. It didn't work for me. Tried twice to get through it.
Really?
Not for everybody.
Okay.
Oh, and here we go.
Wow.
Lane says, though, Uncut Gems is my jam all the way.
If you look
Lane.
at the,
Wow.
Lane,
Here we go.
look at the audience score for Uncut Gems,
Lane.
it's like
I loved
50%.
it.
Yeah.
It's rotten, but the critics love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's super well made and it wants you to dislike the experience of watching it.
Yeah.
But John, at some point we got to some point down the line, we got to do Nightcrawler.
Love Nightcrawler. Love Nightcrawler. We should do Nightcrawler. We should also do Whiplash.
Right?
Yeah. We should do Whiplash, Nightcrawler.
Whiplash. I love Whiplash.
Whiplash is really good. Nightcrawler is really good. Talk about anti-hero. You have seen it?
I did.
All of it? All of it?
I did in a theater.
Oh.
I know.
It'd be interesting to talk about.
I have a feeling Alexie only watches some of these films when he's on a plane because she can't leave. You know, she can't.
Basically.
She can't leave the room. She's on a plane.
Oh, sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, Uncut Gems. I'm surprised it's that polarizing. Oh, that's good.
Well, I think it's because
what?
I think it's because what Avi said, which is, it's designed to be unpleasant.
It is unpleasant.
Yeah.
But he's a great character. Oh.
Okay, a lot of people have been requesting Mulholland Drive.
Wow.
Which we should never do on the show.
Why?
Why?
First of all, I love Mulholland Drive. I love that movie. I have loved it for a long time. I just don't think it's a narrative, really.
Well, what are you talking about? It has all the fundamentals. It has a protagonist.
It does. You're right.
An antagonist.
Okay.
And a midpoint
Wait. You're right, Avi. We should do it. We should do it. But here's maybe because I know too much about it that it started as a pilot. They shot it as a pilot, and then he had and it didn't get picked up by ABC. So he was like, okay, well, I'll finish it as a movie. And you can totally tell right at the 50-minute mark when the story just starts going in a completely different direction.
It would be bad for this class. It'd be very bad for this class.
That's what I meant for the class. I love it, though.
Should we watch Kubrick's, what was that? What are we doing next week? Oh, yeah.
What are we doing next week? Adam, I think maybe you should announce this one. Maybe
I somehow tricked everybody, the team, into doing Fellowship of the Ring, the first Lord of the Rings film. And when Paul, sorry, John, I almost called you Paul. When John,
who's Paul?
Your secret twin brother. When John asked me how long this was, and I said, over 3 hours, he had this look on his face like, oh my God. Yeah. And John,
that's by the way, Adam, you forgot to say what your response was. You said it's a very fast 3.5 hours.
Oh, yeah. And then I was going to tell you an anecdote. So when I saw the movie in theaters in like 2001, when the credits rolled at 3.5 hours, I said out loud, "Is that it?"
Oh my God!
It's over already. I was so into the story, and I was so involved.
Oh, yeah. Did you find that you were saying that to an empty theater?
No, there were people around.
Adam.
I mean, did you wake up everybody? Would everybody say, "Oh, guy, woke me up"?
Adam, I've said that sarcastically at the end of movies. Oh, is that it?
I'm more excited to hear Adam talk about this.
Yeah. By the way, Kaylin, you got it right, man. By the way, exactly. You pay to Adam. Yeah.
So do you know what's so John, I think you're gonna have some narrative problems with it. The biggest being that his objective changes at the midpoint.
I hate that shit.
Yeah, but I would argue that it works because it goes from taking the ring to one place to taking it to another place.
Wait,
so he's still carrying the ring.
3 times in theaters. I was such a nerd about it.
Yeah.
By the way, chances are Adam was in one of those theaters.
Yeah, you're probably.
He was the guy jumping up and down on the seat like Tom Cruise on Oprah.
So, John, do you know how many times I've seen this movie?
it terrifies me even to think. But
over 35 times.
So you wasted.
never guessed
What's the
that.
math on that? You've wasted over 100 hours of your life.
Yeah.
Good.
Man.
Just the first one too.
You
So,
could have been, you could have been knitting a scarf or something. Something productive.
what was that?
You could have been knitting a scarf.
I could have knitted many scarves.
Yeah.
I could be a scarf. I could be a knitting master. I don't know.
John,
What do they call those people?
he wasn't wasting his time; he was investing it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Lord of the Rings is so great. One of the reasons it's so great is that it's just so.
Here we go.
Wait.
I'm with you.
Wait. So, but one of the reasons it's so great is it's the first film it was the first Hollywood epic fantasy film that didn't embrace fairy tale tone and embraced gritty realism. It was the first production design decision where Peter Jackson approached everybody, said, we're going to imagine that all of these things were real, and we're just excavating the props. And we're going to shoot on the actual places this took. We're going to shoot in the actual, we're going to use the actual remake armor that they actually wore. Like, they took an approach of, this is a real place. Whereas all fantasy films in Hollywood before then sort of took a more pastiche fairy tale, like
Adam,
evocative.
we're doing this next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just
I
hyping
just thought, I didn't want to,
He's got to hype everyone up for those 3 hours.
My ex-wife, which may be why she's the ex-wife, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Love the fellowship.
Lane, I don't want you to be too candid, but is this why? Yeah, you walked out of the theater. She said, "I love you." You said, "We're done." But anyway, sorry. No, that was too personal. I apologize for that, and for the broth metaphor.
Yeah, that was terrible, John.
That was awful.
I know.
Yeah.
By the way, Adam.
Yeah.
Hey, Avi, how much coffee is that? That is a, yeah.
Oh, what are you talking about? This? This is normal now. No, but Adam,
You'll be awake for days.
Avi, what?
So I saw my brother ask the question in the comments: what makes Lord of the Rings nerdy as opposed to, say, Spirited Away, where they're both fantasy? And then you started talking about, oh, well, you see, this movie is one that treats it like it's a real world. It's like, well, that's it. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I would also say
deep. That's deep.
The difference from a fantasy point of view, there's in fantasy writing, there's something called soft world building and hard world building. Hard world building being that there's going to be we're going to explain the plausibility. We're going to have explanations for everything. Whereas Miyazaki is more in the soft kinds of thing. Well, it's a fairy tale. You don't necessarily need to know why the Wizard of Oz has it's more just it's narratively there. We don't need to explain why. Whereas
and that's part of the tone, isn't it, Adam? That's part of the tone. The magic of it.
When there are rules, then you learn the rules, and the more rules you learn, the more of a nerd you are.
Yeah, so basically, hard world building, like Tolkien, to really get the full picture, you have to learn a lot of information about something that's completely fictional and doesn't matter. So that's, I think, what makes nerds, right?
Yeah. Doesn't matter might be the operative phrase there, but never mind. Hey, Avi, does your brainy brother, does he like our show?
Hey, Akiva, you like the show?
Akiva, what do you think?
I'll pull it up when he answers.
He watched Spirited Away last night so that he can take
Adam, have you written fan fiction?
For Hey Arnold when I was 12.
Football head?
Oh, yeah. When I was 12, I was emotionally invested. Yeah.
I didn't know invested was the end of that sentence. When I was 12, I was emotionally, I didn't know what the next word was going to be.
I was emotionally invested in that show.
Room and yelled yes.
I did when I was 12,
yes?
and it was terrible.
Well, your brother
I didn't give my characters clear objectives.
You made my day. I pay you $1.
No, Adam, that's 100 thoughts.
Hey, by the way, this is a loaded.
I know my worth.
If the four of us do a podcast, would you guys? Would they come? Would they?
Yeah, it's just yes.
Yes.
They've said yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Yes.
Maybe.
They've said yeah. We need to do it one of these days. Once we finish the feature course, once we get that out the door, then we'll have more time to make more stuff.
More stuff.
Oh yeah, people are saying yes, 100%.
And we're doing the theatrical cut for those who are asking.
John, here's answers to your question.
Oh, that's nice, Paul. Thank you. Oh, wow. Okay.
We have 7. Wow, a lot of yeses. So yeah.
Wow. Really?
We should do it.
Okay, we should do it. You know what? We'll do it.
10 whole people
in
for our audience.
No, we get a lot. Fat. Wait, what was the fat dog? Was that? It was funny.
Oh.
If you podcast, they will get very funny.
I thought he said, at first I thought he said no. I would love someone to say no.
Yeah.
I want somebody to say no. I love
to let it out and just let it out.
Maybe you guys, maybe John. I think John's the same way. But John, I appreciate when somebody doesn't like me. Like I want to know.
Yeah.
You know.
And by the way, it's a great thing to accept the fact that some people don't know.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
That's funny.
I want somebody to know. I want to know that somebody doesn't want to hear.
Wait a minute. Look at Kaylin. Kaylin, that's so funny.
What was your hairstyle to look like? Was it a mohawk? I imagine it was a mohawk.
Why are we?
No.
I don't know.
John didn't care about his hair. That was not something he ever put energy into. If he did,
and by the way, it got pissed off and it left.
Yeah.
But if you aren't going to give us more attention than this, we're out of here. I'm going to find it. I don't know why. By the way, a little bizarre that people are curious about. I don't know.
I am super curious.
Why, Alexie? Why?
It's because of people really, really want to hear me talk about Lord of the Rings, which is what I'm convinced is the linchpin for the entire show.
Oh man.
My God.
Anyway, so we're doing that next week. And is there any last question anybody wants to get on before we sign off?
Yeah.
Let's see.
John, just FYI, you should definitely watch more Miyazaki films because he's a master at story. He's really good.
And show your hair. I'm invested now.
But I am going to watch more Miyazaki films. By the way, I get it. I mean, he's brilliant. I'm going to get that book that Alexie has.
Yeah.
I think he's genius. But Adam, I hope you understand the reason that I have a little bit of a knee jerk is that what did Adam just? Is it a fly?
Sorry, there's a fly, and I just went to. I wasn't saying fuck you, John. Sorry, there's a fly right above my camera on my laptop.
Yeah.
I have a question, John.
Yeah.
Would we ever, just for the sake of counterexample, do a class on a movie that you hate?
Yeah, we should do that.
Room. We should do The Room.
The Room. I don't know The Room. Yes, we should.
It's one of the greatest films I've ever seen.
By the way, I like watching films that are not structurally sound. I like, my students particularly, they'll go, "Hey, Mr. Warren, did you see? I bet you hated it." I go, "No, I love, I like them." Yeah.
You know, it'd be a good thing to discuss. What? A movie that technically does everything right, but is bad.
Oh,
that's a great. By the way, last night I saw Irresistible, which is Jon Stewart's film. Irresistible.
Oh.
Is that a no? Is that a no from you, John?
That makes Avi's point. It's technically right. It's got a pretty good reversal. No subtlety at all. I mean, it just keeps hitting you in the face, and you go, "Oh my God!" But there's a film, that could be the film. Although I can't watch it again, I'll kill myself.
Oh, we should do a Hallmark. People are suggesting Hallmark for the holiday.
A Hallmark, I can't really.
Here's what I'd like to do: a movie that tries, and technically speaking, you could totally imagine why the script sold. And was done, like, it wasn't mangled in the production. Like, it's clearly that script, and it clearly hits the beats, and they put effort into it, and it's just dreadful. It's just soulless. And I'd be so curious to see why, because, like, what we were talking about earlier about how you want it to become involuntary, you want to stop thinking about it like breathing. I want to see a movie where the writer thought about it so consciously at every step of the way, and though that intention carries through, but because they're thinking so hard about that, there's no meaning, there's no character relationship, there's no real theme, and it feels mechanical. And because I feel like it's a worthwhile thing to discuss how to avoid that, because that's a harder thing to teach. It's easy to teach mechanics.
But I think it's a great note. There's a film, believe it or not, I know this is sacrilege, but Spielberg made this film. I think it's called War Horse. It was based on a
Spielberg,
play.
right?
Ooh.
Spielberg.
And Spielberg film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievably bad. And he hits every beat. And there's there's a two shot of a horse and a boy in the last frame. You think I don't get out of this theater, I'm gonna lose my mind. It's so bad. But Avi, it's to your point. Every beat is there. He knows what he's doing. He's making the choices. You know what he's doing before he's doing it. There's no soul to the film. It's just dreadful. Is it called War Horse? Does anybody know? Huh?
War Horse is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like they've been over edit. Like it's like when someone has something that used to have heart and then they've lost it because they've just done so much like fixing. It reminds me of like basically every Netflix original for the most part.
Oh my God, that film Powers, I think, is an example of that. Like,
what's that?
It's a new Netflix film.
Project Power.
With Jamie Foxx. It's a great idea. It's a great idea and the idea is if you there are these pills that are being produced, and if you take the pill, you get superpowers for 5 minutes. Right? That's an amazing idea.
That's a great idea.
The film is so I didn't like it.
You know how he sold it? How he sold the script?
No.
So basically,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So,
by the way,
how do you spell the script,
as you know, in this room,
I'll get back to
everybody has an opinion, and nobody's shy about what they're. Yeah. So I didn't mean to offend.
So Adam,
what were you saying? How they sell it?
So this writer, I was reading an interview with him. So he for like several years of his life decided he was going to write 10 scripts a year, which blows my mind. And he got a few of them sort of like out there winning contests and whatnot. I think like a couple of them were on the blacklist. Nothing was selling. And so then he asked himself, what are people making? They're making superhero movies. I don't have any IP. I can't write for Marvel or DC or anything like that, but I'm going to try to come up with an idea that's a superhero movie. And so he came up with this idea of the pills that give you powers, and it became a bidding war, and Netflix bought it, and now he's writing the new Batman.
So it worked.
By the way,
for him.
I mean that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's
it's chasing a trend, but he caught it at the right moment instead of falling behind.
And he must have nailed the script.
Well, he also got the Batman job before reviews came out for Project Power. Project Power is just trash.
So Adam, I saw Project Power, and I'm like kind of middle of the road with it, and I feel like it's a good example of a movie that it does hit the beats. You feel like it doesn't go to the full potential of what it can do. It just sort of does enough, and that's it.
Right. I mean, it was mediocre. I didn't hate it, to be totally honest. I just felt like the idea was so good, and it was such a.
But have you seen Extraction?
I have not seen Extraction.
That's a movie that hits the beats and bored me to tears.
You're not
speaking of not being bored, what are we seeing next week?
We already said that, right?
Lord of the Rings.
Kidding.
John, is the Alzheimer's hitting already? You know.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I've 3 hours of my life I've put aside, and I'm eager to watch.
John, it is very good. It is very good.
I'm sure. I'm looking forward.
You have to notice, and I'm going to say this: the only time I'm going to say it.
Is it?
The last Lord of the Rings film won more Oscars on one night than any other film in history, tied with Ben-Hur. Like that says something. I don't know what it says, but it says something.
It says something.
As opposed to
it was nominated for more and won more. And tied for the most, which was 11 Oscars, and it had 14 nominations.
Wow. Okay.
That's a lot, and it won Best Picture. It's the first fantasy film to ever win a Best Picture.
And the last, right?
And the last, yes, the last.
You say Lord of the Rings, it's like Adam's got a crank and you just wound it up, and he just.
But John, also you have to realize my dad read me out loud Lord of the Rings when I was like 4 years old. Like this is so deep in my subconscious.
Wow, that's like what made you.
Yeah.
Okay,
That was like deep in my subconscious. But I will recognize there are things that are not good about the movie. Like Orlando Bloom, I think is a terrible actor.
Well, he is terrible.
He's terrible. He's terrible in everything.
We're getting.
He's consistent. He's consistently bad. Anyway, are we okay? Are we? This has been fun. Spirited way. It was a spirited conversation.
Yeah.
All right. Let's end the cut, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Yep. See you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.